Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the How to Spot a Fake Natty series, and today's subject is none other than Kane Sumabat. And I know I probably said that wrong, but who gives a shit, am I right? Alright, well Kane found himself on my radar the other day when I saw someone post something on social media underneath one of his posts on Facebook, and I caught him doing a little bit of slut shaming, as you guys can see right there. And so I decided to do a little bit of digging into Mr. Kane here, which of course led me to his stats, which are right here above for you guys. And there we have it. He is 5'10", 175 pounds, and was currently 46 years old at the time of that interview. You know, and a lot of people are going to say, look, he's a fitness model. Do we really need to cover this? It's such a competitive market that the idea that anyone actually makes a living as a fitness model drug-free is laughable. And no, guys, we need a little more than that. We'll actually look a little closer. It's probably not cool to do it based on that, because there's maybe 1% of them pull it off, possibly drug-free. It is possible there's 1%, maybe 2%. Being very generous, it pulled that off. So we can't go just off that. Let's actually look at some numbers, look at some photos before we jump to conclusions. But speaking of conclusions, let's look at that back. His back development is pretty insane right there, particularly that trap area up there, which again, one of the muscles that is most affected by androgens, therefore is oftentimes not absolute proof, but indicative of anabolic use. Now, the other thing is, look how insanely lean he is there. That was the actual photo listed with his stats, and a reasonable person would have to conclude that the interviewer put that photo there, a current photo with his current stats. So if he is as lean at 175 pounds as he is in that photo, he is probably about 5% body fat there. Insanely lean, absolutely ridiculously lean. So let's run his fat-free mass index numbers, and we come up with 24.1. Now, normally we would say people who are under 10% body fat, 25 is going to be the limit, but studies have shown the average steroid user sits at about 24.5. 25 is generally limited to the hardest training, long-term training, genetically elite. That is your absolute pinnacle, and I know people want to argue with that, but I haven't seen any data to this day that would convince me that older statistic and data is wrong. Now, he is inside that limit, so I will give him that, but there is something further to consider with that, and that is his age. And that's one of the factors that's really interesting here that I want to point out. This is kind of something that makes his natty status very, very questionable. Because most guys who started training at a very young age realize very quickly, not only do you have diminished returns over the years, you start regressing a little bit no matter what you do. So if you reached your peak by 25 or your late 20s, usually by your mid 30s, you start losing muscle mass, you start losing strength. Even if you train really, really well and effectively, you will start to see a mild decline at that point. So the fact that he's sitting up there at 5% body fat at 24.1 at age 46, that's really pushing it a lot, because again, he's going to struggle past his mid 30s to even maintain what he had in his 20s, and he is someone who did start training as a teenager, and that's what we need to look at. Look at this next set of photos that I'm going to put up for you guys, and it's put in a timeline. Basically, he's been training and has been very lean since he was at least 18 years old, you can see there. But the thing is, most people make most of their gains in the first year or two, 70, 80, maybe 90% of their drug-free muscle gains for life. And then you see rapidly diminished returns. This has been confirmed with study after study after study. And then as you start to reach an age where your hormone levels start to decline, usually your 30s, you start to regress. However, he hasn't regressed. You will notice that at 18, he's lean, ripped, all of that. 20, he's slightly bigger. Mid-20s, he's slightly bigger still. He just has this continual slow progress. But then he gets to his 30s, and he's a lot bigger than he was in his 20s. Then you go to like 41, and he's a lot bigger again than he was in his 20s. He had been training for years, had been training hard. So he should have maxed out the vast majority of his drug-free gains by the time he was 20 or 21. Yet at 30, he is massively bigger, more proportionate, more defined, everything else in his early 30s. And then you go all the way to 41, he's a little bit bigger. 42 and 46, he's in better condition than he was in his 20s at years of training. He's leaner, thicker, more striated, and overall bigger. It doesn't work that way in humans, and anyone who continues to make that type of progress as they get older without any exogenous hormones in their body, it just doesn't work that way. All right, maybe if he had started TRT in his 30s and continued to train really, really hard, sometimes you'll see some continual progress, because TRT, there is data on that showing that it's actually superior to your natural production, even if it gives you the same peak levels. So it tends to be superior to what you were producing when younger, and that helps offset some of the other negative effects of aging, such as the slower recovery, slower connective tissue recovery, things like that that tend to happen with age, even if you train and even if your hormone levels are stable. But he made continual progress well up through his 30s, through his 40s, for again 2 decades. And that really doesn't work that way in the human body. And again, anyone who's been training for 2 decades, if you talk to them, they'll tell you that that isn't how it works. They don't look better in their 40s than they did in their 30s. They don't look better in their 30s than they did in their 20s, unless that's the very decade they started training for the first time. So this is really suspect when you look at that, even though he is technically, in terms of lean body mass, he is inside the reasonably obtainable drug-free limit. His progress over the years of it actually being continual like that, and then him having that dry, shrink-wrapped, striated look well into his 40s, it generally comes from using very specific creatine and whey protons. Again, very suspect. So when I look at Kane Sumabat, you guys want my expert opinion, I'm going to have to call fake Natty, definitely on some creatine and whey protons. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.